In 1998, LSD Dream Emulator would release for the PlayStation 1 made by Asmic Ace under the creative vision of Japanese artist Osamu Sato. He doesn't know yet, but this game is going to gain a cult following in a couple of years, and more importantly to the topic of today's video, will become one of the earliest instances of the aesthetic Weirdcore. I'm Baboon-Toothed, and welcome to an introduction to Weirdcore. Weirdcore is an aesthetic that has been near and dear to my heart ever since I first found it as a wee little 6th grader, which is a very long time ago now. But, what is it? It's kind of a problem to answer because there isn't really a clear definition. It's kind of become an umbrella term for a lot of other aesthetics that it's gotten tangled with. For example, almost all of its imagery is filled with liminal spaces. It's gotten really closely tied with Dreamcore, a lot of webcore elements, traumacore, kidcore, maybe analog horror if you consider that an aesthetic and not just a genre, clowncore maybe. Point is, it's a mess, and a lot of stuff has kind of gotten mixed into it. And I know that a lot of people don't like that. There's kind of a debate on if Dreamcore and Weirdcore and all that stuff should be separate, but I kind of came into it when all that stuff was already very, the waters were already very muddied up with all that different stuff. And so I kind of think of Weirdcore as more of an umbrella term, if that makes sense, which I kind of want to get into, quote-unquote, true Weirdcore, and then, stuff that people kind of, debate on if it's, Weirdcore or Dreamcore. But, all the most well-known images, some of the artists that made them, stuff like that. Stick around, it's gonna be really cool. Since Weirdcore doesn't really have a solid definition, let's just get some basic common traits down. Weirdcore images are often low-quality or amateurly taken photos, usually with digital editing layered over them, ranging from simply being a little bit extra compressed just because it looks cool, to being completely covered in nonsensical extra graphics like they've been covered in surreal stickers. The photos themselves are often comprised of out-of-place objects or liminal spaces that often contain childhood scenes now empty, bringing feelings of nostalgia to the viewer. Beyond these base images, the editing is incredibly important and can completely flip the feeling of what you're looking at. If you go out and look for a Weirdcore image right now, one of the first things you're going to see is a lot of really weird text captions. They do a lot of things. Maybe they're trying to comfort you, maybe they're trying to ask questions, maybe they're malicious and they're trying to trick you, you don't really know. Or maybe they're not even really talking directly to you. It's like there's this unseen divine being in the image. Or maybe it's echoes from the past that you can only foggily remember. It really adds a very nice vibe to the photo, especially when they have cool fonts and colors. Really big fan. Some other fun common additions are swapping out walls and ceilings for the sky or strange colors, funky colorful image borders, these red clickbait outline things, I don't really know what they're called, or fun sparkly effects normally with GIFs. Also, another thing that I noticed that's not really as specific, but I see it a lot, is switching out the atmosphere of the sky for the pool, or switching out the pool water for the sky instead. I just think that that's a really fun one that I see a lot too. Polygon Donut has a fantastic video that goes way more in depth on all these different little niches for the photos, and also has a very nice segment in the video on the different atmospheres or auras, as they call it, of the images, showing the range from the peaceful dreamlike worlds of suburbias or blank fields highlighted by blue sky to the darkened and panicked snippets of emotion that it can give us as well in more nightmare scenario kind of stuff. I highly recommend that you check out their video and even more their channel because they just make a ton of cool stuff. Seriously, please check them out. Now that you've gotten a good look at some Weirdcore images, how would you describe them? Hazy? Comforting? Maybe anxiety-inducing? Funny thing is, all of these are also used to describe Dreamcore as well. For the most part, Dreamcore is what it sounds like. It's just kind of aesthetic that's based on the feeling of being in a dream. But Weirdcore also does this feeling of being in a dream very, very well, and so they kind of mix together and take things from each other. But not necessarily in a bad way. They mix together very, very well. Once again, we see a prevalence of liminal spaces, although these images tend to be less compressed and lack the funky image borders and sparkly effects, and they trade them out for fuzzy, colorful landscapes and strange creatures and characters, which we'll actually be getting into later. When it comes to the editing of Dreamcore images, they do have several similarities with Weirdcore, including text, little black sensor bars, weird fields and stuff, although once again these ones tend to be a little bit higher quality. And then it gets into the really Dreamcore stuff that tends to divide people on if they actually wanted to be a part of Weirdcore or not. These can include eyes, teeth, flowers. Everything has eyes. Flowers with eyes, mushrooms with eyes, lots of mushrooms, angelic looking figures too, a lot of religious symbolism. And some people think that it's too aesthetically pleasing to be a part of Weirdcore, and Weirdcore should just stick to the ugly but whimsical, colorful text and borders and stuff like that. and, all the eyes and teeth and whatever shouldn't be a part of it. But personally, I think that it adds a lot of variety to the images, and I think that they can work well together. I think that it kind of balances it out a little bit. It's nice. Another common thing to see in the community that leans much more heavily into the Dreamcore side of things are characters like this. If you were into either of these aesthetics, you pretty much couldn't avoid these things for a little while, especially on TikTok for some reason. Creating your own original characters and being super proud of them is cool and obviously takes a lot of creativity and talent, but there's a sort of problem that seems to arise with specifically these kinds of characters that lean into this aesthetic that I know that I'm not alone in noticing. All of these characters are pretty much the same. Cut the head off of a person wearing some kind of fun outfit, maybe a suit, maybe, some kind of like colorful kidcore thing. Take an object and then slap an eye onto it and you're pretty much done. Sometimes there's like angel wings or maybe text floating around them, but other than that, it's a huge problem. It's literally just hundreds and hundreds of characters just like this, no matter where you go. These kinds of characters are definitely they're neat and they're cool to look at, but they're so painfully overdone that they've lost appeal to a lot of people and even big fans of the aesthetic. And again, there's nothing wrong with making characters like this, and I'm not a design genius, but if you're gonna make your own Weirdcore character for your own thing, you can have one of these. Obviously, I'm not your dad. I'm not gonna, be like, oh, you can't fucking do that. But be more abstract. Do something that's different. Add your own spin on it. Please just don't make another flower with an eye. I know I'm definitely not the only person that has this issue. Just my opinion. Just throwing it in here because it's kind of a talking point. While we're on the topic of critters that inhabit these worlds, I should bring up Googore, which actually branches out from the starflesh aesthetic, which is something that I actually hadn't heard of before doing a little more research on Googore for this video. The starflesh aesthetic seems to have a big focus on teeth and animals and weird dark imagery, which, I'm a big fan of. It seems very similar to cryptcore, fairy grunge, stuff like that, so, I'm not too unfamiliar with it. It seems really neat, and I might even make a separate video on it, although it is definitely nowhere near as popular as Weirdcore is, a little bit more obscure. Anyways, Googore is kind of distantly branching the gap between Weirdcore and starflesh in a way. It features mostly common animals you can find all over America, like people's pets, cats and dogs, deer, and owls a little bit, although cats are definitely the most common thing to see. The mutations on them are kind of adding extra eyes, focusing on the teeth, a lot of stuff with the flash on. People love the flash, although this is not just like a Googore thing. That's with just a ton of aesthetics. People love that. I love that. But that's about as much as it goes for animals and Weirdcore imagery. The last type of living presence that you'll tend to see in Weirdcore images are the voids. They can take a lot of different shapes and forms, and they're really easily utilized for a lot of different ideas and things that are trying to be conveyed. It's a little overused, but sometimes it takes the forms of these shadow people that normally are just used to blank out real people in the image, but they work well for letting the viewer project their own ideas or people in their lives into the images and making it more relatable. On the other hand, there are the voids in their rawest forms, simply floating shapes in the air, passively watching over the world around them, or maybe stopping you from seeing something that you don't quite want to remember. These are also kind of their own separate thing, but there's also the orbs and the stars, which are just super neat. I just love looking at them. I mean, especially the orbs, which also led to top 10 Weirdcore images of all time. Always consult the orbs. I don't even know if the guy that made it was trying to go for it being Weirdcore, because I know that the image is at least over 7 years old, I think, which was a little bit before Weirdcore kind of rose in popularity as an actual term, but I'm not sure where it really originated from, but love it. Love it. Speaking of great Weirdcore images, let's take a trip through the Weirdcore Hall of Fame. Some of the best Weirdcore images of all time. Yeah. Some stuff might be missing, but I feel like these are just either personal favorites or they're the ones that I've seen the most when I hear Weirdcore brought up. Since this video is only a sort of introduction to Weirdcore, I mostly want to just focus on like the images, but I thought that I should probably touch on like music and games really quick too. For games, there's Nikki and LSD Dream Emulator, which I might make separate videos on those later. But there are plenty, a ton of like video essays and stuff on that you can go find on YouTube. Super easy. I recommend you look them up. They're pretty cool. But the problem is with Weirdcore music specifically is that the only real like Weirdcore music is like the soundtracks for those games. And then there's also a bunch of like TikTok audios that were popular a couple years ago that people put with them, but they're kind of like, I don't want to say that they're overplayed, because I mean they fit the aesthetic well, but there's just like only a handful of them. And like if you look up like Weirdcore playlist on YouTube, you're just gonna find like the same 20 Weirdcore songs, right? So that's kind of a pain. But also Jack Stauber is great. I'd say that he's pretty Weirdcore, if you want to call him that. But I didn't script this last part, if you can't tell. I feel like this video has pretty much covered all the bases of Weirdcore and the kind of aesthetics around it, which is why it's time for a pop quiz. Who directed LSD Dream Emulator? Osamu Sato. Who made this image? I'm not even gonna bother. I'm gonna butcher that. What genre of Weirdcore is this image? Googore, and holy shit, that's the end of the video. You're an expert now. Seriously though, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. I had a lot of fun making this video. I would love to make more videos like this in the future, although it did take me a while because I just kind of like forgot about it for like months. If you do have any ideas for videos in the future, pretty please leave a comment, because I really do want to do more content like this in the future. And yeah, that's been it.